This is Tim Albright with AVNation with an AVNation special celebrating International Women's Day, the entire month of March, because there's an entire community, a wide spectrum of incredible women in the AV industry, and I can't confine them to one day. So with me today is my buddy Brandy Alvarado, owner of BAM Marketing. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Not to be remiss, I would be remiss if I didn't also say the fact that you are the chair of the AVIXA Women's Council as well.
Yes,
So thank you for that and for your service there. What we're doing is we're kind of getting folks journeys, right? And if you've ever been to a trade show or ever been to an industry event, a fun kind of question to start out with is how did you end up in the industry? And you're going to get, for 10,000 people you ask, you're going to get 10,000 different versions. So Brandy, first question for you then is how did you end up in AV?
I was actually stalked. So I used to work for a large insurance brokerage, and Randy Pagnon of RP Visuals actually found me on LinkedIn and reached out. And he actually reached out kind of early initially and was interested in talking to me and interviewing me. And then it kind of got quiet, which was really kind of interesting. And I was still looking at the time. And lo and behold, about a month later, he actually reached out again and said, "Hey, listen, I still want to talk to you. Can you come in and interview?" And I landed up at RPV really because of social media, to be truthfully honest. So that's kind of how I got my start. And I know a lot of people just sort of fall into it. There's not an AV 101 curriculum that I know of anywhere in any sort of tech college or anything like that. So, I think a lot of us, quite honestly, fall into it.
Well, talk for a second about, what Randy saw kind of in you and based on that made him think that you would fit this community.
Well, I love technology, and I'm sort of a nerd when it comes to like databases and CRMs and things like that. But I've also got a very creative side to me as well. So bringing me on as the director of marketing and sales for them was kind of an all-inclusive thing. They wanted to rebrand the company and new logo, new website, new look, new feel, and really align sales and marketing. So, when I came on board, we took over looking at the CRM and really honed it and, made certain processes that would allow for really great reporting of, marketing campaigns and that sort of thing and how they fed into the sales structure. We redesigned the website, redid the logo, and revamped all of that in terms of a marketing strategy. And we really honed in on who their buyer personas really were. And that was a big key element because if anybody knows RPV, they cater to a lot of different folks. They can cater to manufacturers, integrators, consultants, architects, the full gamut, and those sort of creators, if you will, in the industry. And really being specific as to who we were targeting was what was key for them. We really sort of honed in on that voice and who it was that we really wanted to speak to and target.
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's a huge thing. And then, trying to get that disparate of buyer personas had to be difficult. Trying to wrap all those folks around.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's kind of talk for a second before we get into the second half of this. Is talk for a second about your involvement with the AVIXA Women's Council and how you got involved there. It has exploded over the last 4 or 5 years. A lot of that is attributed to the local chapters as well, and a lot of it, work that you do there in Southern California, but also the number of chapters that we have both in the U.S. and globally. So talk for a second about the AVIXA Women's Council and kind of that growth.
Gosh, Corey Schaefer and I started this in 2014. We always say we didn't ask permission to start local groups. Quite honestly, we didn't. We just took it upon ourselves to gather a group of women in Southern California and hold our first meeting, the first local group meeting. And from there, it just really took off. It spurred other groups around the country. And as of today, we're 50 groups globally with a presence growing in the APAC and LATAM areas. So that's a big thing. But, we quickly discovered with the Women's Council that it's very much member driven, and that's what we've really kind of keyed in on, is that, what we do in Southern California is not what they do in New York or Toronto or any of the other local groups. They all are very much member driven. So we're constantly asking our local groups, what do you want to get out of this? What type of resources do you need? What type of events should we be holding? And so, for all of us, we do different things. We do, women empowerment things, women in leadership type of events, things where we're doing sort of hands-on tech events or manufacturers courses that are worth CTS RUs, or, behind the scenes tech tours, which are really fun. But, overall, it's really about what the members want to get out of this. So, maybe it's mentoring, maybe it's a leadership type of thing. Maybe they want to, increase their visibility through social media. Whatever it is, we're really trying to key into those things and give that to our members locally as well as globally.
Talk for a second about what that foundation meant last year, right, in 2020. I mean, when we all kind of went home for a minute, for lack of a better term, right? We started working from home. Those connections, right? Both local connections, again, still virtual, but also the global ones as well, and that support system to make sure that not only to see each other, even though it's virtual, but also to kind of check in on each other and make sure that's kind of what our community does, is make sure that everyone's okay, regardless of whether their company had downsizing or they had an outbreak or something. Talk for a second about that kind of support system that this provided folks.
Yeah, it was really tough, to be quite honest with you. I wasn't, at the time when we went home back in March of last year, I wasn't in a position where I had been furloughed or anything like that as of yet. That came in October for me, but almost immediately I felt the impact within within the council. I got so many calls and people pinging me left and right, wanting to chat, wanting to know if I knew of any opportunities, because one of the things that the council sort of built on over the last couple of years is that women tend to be a little bit more timid when they're searching for jobs. We're not ones to put it out there in the media that we're open to work or we're looking for work or spreading the word. We sort of do that on the DL a lot of times. And so we took it upon ourselves and the councils to actually talk about, possible opportunities. And even if somebody was too shy to speak up and say, I'm looking, then at least we had the opportunity to say, such and such company is looking for this, so and so company's looking for this. Oh, hey, my company's hiring for this kind of a thing. And so at least the opportunities were put out there, and potentially we could match some people up that would be ideal for those positions. But in terms of pandemic, the calls, the emails, the conversations, the coffee, times with a lot of folks, it was pretty brutal in the first couple of months, quite honestly, and it kept going, and a lot of a lot of great women were losing jobs and that sort of thing, and boy, it's just really tough, and again, trying to be just a facilitator and a connector was really the role that I kind of took on at that point, and still do to some degree as well, although not as much. I think we're seeing an uptick back into people getting sort of rehired and employed at this point. So that's the good news at this point. But yeah, it's really tough. But for me specifically, I feel like, my role as the chair was really to help connect, facilitate, and, offer events throughout the rest of the, that time, helping people ramp up their resumes, ramp up their social media profiles, give them some confidence and wellness boosters, along the way, again, to help sort of mitigate any sort of things that were going on potentially, and to give, the resources. That's really, I find the most helpful as the chair is what kind of resources I can give people, and everybody needs something different, to be quite honest. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk for a second about you came from a completely separate industry, and coming into the AV industry, Randy obviously, kind of pursued you and made sure that, you certainly knew, recruited you. But once you got here and started seeing some things, whether it was, at a trade show or another industry event, what sort of hurdles have you encountered and how did you overcome them?
Quite honestly, I didn't know that women were the minority when I started with
Oh,
RPV. I started 2 weeks before Infocom, and I got dropped into the deep end, quite honestly. Literally, it was a sink or
wow.
swim kind of a a moment, and I remember standing in our booth at Infocom, whatever that was, 2014 or something like that, I believe, 2013, and looking around the floor going, why are there so many men? I didn't see a woman for miles, in the convention center. And I quite honestly didn't know at that time what a minority we were. And I quickly found out, there was hardly any women in the industry. We're probably like 10 or 12% of the workforce. And, in talking to my buddy Corey Schaefer and others, I quickly found out that, this is how it is, and women really have to find their voices and their foothold in the industry by all means necessary. And yeah, it was an eye-opening moment, quite honestly. But you know, it taught me a lot though, because being in sort of the old boys club, if you will, it's eye-opening. You really have to sort of set boundaries, and what you'll tolerate and adapt to and things like that. And I know that for me specifically, I'm very alpha mentality, and I do tend to put my foot down and create those sort of boundaries right away. But at the same time, I want to make sure that I'm not coming across as that woman. I want to be, somebody with a solid reputation and somebody who's going to leave a lasting legacy in this industry. And I loved it. The moment that I saw all the technology and got to, sort of to experience that, I was hooked. There was no way that I was going to leave AV, and I'll be damned if I do now. So yeah,
I would agree with that getting hooked part, right?
yeah,
You once you and it was quite frankly, and this is not a commercial for Infocom or AVIXA, but that was what it did to me, right? I stood in the middle of the show floor, my first Infocom, and I'm like, okay, I'm done, right?
yeah.
I'm like
Sign
you,
me
I'm
up.
not, sign me up, I'm not going anywhere. As we wrap up here, you mentioned, leaving that legacy and helping other women. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want the change to be when you sit back on your, on your front porch many years from now,
Gonna
um,
lemonade.
in the hills of Southern California, watching the sunset over the Pacific? I'm painting the entire picture here.
That's
Um,
hilarious.
what do you want? What do you want? What do you want to have changed in the industry?
Yeah, it's funny because a lot of people have been sort of planting the seeds right now with me, because this is my last year as the chair for the Women's Council. I will have run my 3-year course, and I always said that I wanted to leave it better than I found it. Right, give the women, a voice, give them an equal share at the table, so to speak, and to move the needle. That's been my goal ever since I started, is to get us past that 10, 12, 14% of the industry number that we keep seeing. I'm not sure where we're at right now, to be quite honest with you. With COVID, who the heck really knows? We've lost jobs. A lot of women, unfortunately, have stepped out of AV, and that's a knife to the heart, quite honestly. That's the last thing that I want to hear, but I can completely understand the need for having to work and
Yeah.
support a family. But I guess, what it boils down to is, for me, just leaving this industry for women better than I found it. And so, creating initiatives and creating, sort of grassroots, elements that they can grasp onto and know that they have a sense of community, and they have a place to come where it's safe, and where we're supportive of each other and fix each other's crowns. That's what I want to
I,
leave behind.
I think you were certainly on your way for that. So thank you so much, Brandy Alvarado, owner of BAM Marketing. How do people connect with you or BAM?
Sure, they can find me online at bammarketingpr.com. I'm also on Twitter at avbrandy, and pretty much everywhere else.
All right, very good. Brandy Alvarado from BAM. Also, I would be remiss. Also, congratulations, she just got engaged. So That's awesome too. So yeah, showing off her ring. So congratulations there. For us, for AVNation, go by our website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. You will find this program and a host of others, including an entire month of incredible, fantastic other women in the AV industry. All that and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.